workshop will come to order. Let us pray. Merciful God, we thank you for the blessing of this day, for the privilege now to come together to deliberate on the finances and the budget for the Solid Waste Authority. We ask your guidance and your direction. Pray that we, our Father, will deal with it in the Spirit of Christ. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We stand for the pledge. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me, first of all, say thank you to each of you for coming out this morning and being here for us to deal with this budget workshop. I want to thank those who prepared breakfast for us, and we appreciate the effort. And we're ready now to go into the workshop. Mr. Knight, do you have anything that you want to say before we get started?
Yes, sir. And thanks for everyone being here and the participation up to this point. I must say that this year has been a challenge. It looks like it's a challenge for the county as well. Money's tight. Staff has poured over this thing, and I just must thank them for the time they've spent. Bill and Esther and Mike, they've battled it and argued it, and it come to a point. We've got a big year ahead of us. Our biggest thing that we'll be doing is the characterization study of our waste stream, and that's going to benefit us in so many different avenues, whether it's recommendations to council on restrictions, materials to the landfill, versus new guys coming in, diversion programs that we may be facing. We're facing the construction of the first phase of the piggyback. We're winding up the closure, the 33-acre closure site, and the only thing King Construction hadn't done yet is build an arc. They've needed it a couple of times, but they feel good about the schedule. Vance Group was here yesterday. We've got a permit for food composting. It came in yesterday, so we're ready to go there. So this year is going to be a very interesting year, and I just want to thank staff for their dedication and the hard work that they do in the field, in the office, at the centers, at the MRF. Everybody pulls their load, and I appreciate that in them. I'll turn it over to Jan and I'd love to open this thing up to where if you got questions or discussions, that's what it's all about. Understand it when we leave, what's in it. We have cut, the last 5 years, I guess, we have cut a lot of money out of the budget. We've reduced employees, and I wish we had some of that money today that we have cut, but that's wishful thinking. We will make our budget, we will be in the black at the end of the year, and we'll have a balanced budget when you finish up. So, Jan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to kind of start off with just a couple questions that were brought up at the pre-budget workshop that I kind of wanted to answer the questions I think that we kind of left on the table. One I know had to do with the workers' comp, and I kind of got back with Nanette to kind of go over exactly how we calculate that. And of course, each position out here has a classification. And so based on the salary of the person in that position and that classification and the experience modifier, that's where our workers' comp figure comes from. And then when I say we add a 20%, after we do that calculation, then we add an additional 20%. So, it isn't a 20% increase necessarily from last year, that kind of thing. It's just an increase we add as a just in case. So our experience modifier does help each year when, like I said, when it's lower and it's better, then of course it does help. And as you see, as we go through here, you'll see our workers' comp slight increases, from each year to year. And those are basically because, with the step plan that we have in place, salaries increase normally each year, that type of thing. So that's normally where the increase comes in, is when the salaries increase, that's where the increase comes in. Because you'd see a larger increase if we didn't have that experience modifier lowering each year. That's helping us save those costs, for it not cost us as much. So when I say the 20%, it isn't a 20% increase necessarily. Like I said, it is, it is, but it's not overall, because the experience modifier goes down, that 20% is less. So as we go through, I'll kind of show you where the workers' comp is. Like I said, I was just kind of going through looking. You're talking might be $60 to $100 increase in workers' comp from one year to the other for each department. So they are slight increases in the workers' comp. So they are doing a good job keeping the safety issues down and like I said, keeping the accidents down. So that is helping us definitely save on those costs.
Is that budget modified once you find out what the actuals are going to be? Do you go back?
We don't. We base it on the previous years. So, and like I said, we do an audit each year. The auditor from the workers' comp comes in each year, and we get a refund based on, because we pay in based on what our salaries, what we anticipate our salaries being. So, and we've been very fortunate, knock on wood, every year we get a refund back. So
What did we get this year?
this year, I think we got back like a $12,000 refund. So, and then I go back and I spread that back out to the departments. So they'll see a credit usually in about September, October. They get a credit in their workers' comp for that month based on the previous years.
And is that shopped, or is that something that through the state?
Through the state, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other question I know was one that Ms. Creech had on our post-employment benefits versus the counties. And the way our policy works is if you have at least 10 years with the Solid Waste Authority, we'll pay 50% of the premium. They pay 50, the employee pays 50%, we pay 50%, but you have to have at least 10 years. Anything less than 10 years, they can stay on it, but they have to pay 100% of the premium. Anybody with at least 20 years, we pay 75%. And so 75% is the maximum we pay unless you have a contract or something that specifies something different. So ours is, like I said, we have 50% and 75% based on 10 or 20 years. The counties is a little bit different. They have, when they started, like I said, when they made their changes, one thing that they implemented was employees hired after June 30th, 2011, they can stay on the insurance, but they have to pay 100% of the policy premium or whatever. So no new employees are eligible for any kind of discount with the county. So that is different from ours. That's one thing that's different. They also, like I said, they have just a 50 and 100%. Anything from 15 to 29 years, they pay 50% of the premium. And in more than 30 years, they pay 100%. So, like I said, you have to have at least 15 years with the county to even be eligible for any kind of portion of their payment. Where ours starts, like I said, at 10, and then, like I said, theirs is at 30 years. It's 100%. So I did a little analysis. We have currently 11 employees that are retired that are on ours, and it's costing us around $34,000 a year, which like I said, that is funded through our OPEB, the money we set aside in that designated account. But that's what the portion of it is for us. And with the counties, if we did it exactly following theirs, it'd be right at about half, it's about $17,000. So there could be a little bit of a savings there each year of about, $17,000 if we changed our plan to something more along the lines of theirs.
Well, the reason they changed theirs was they found it was not sustainable. We may find the same thing. I'd rather personally see ours mirror theirs, and I definitely would like to see ours change for new employees. I don't like going back and changing something an employee's already been promised.
Right.
I don't think that's fair. But I think we do need to give some thought to what we will do in the future under those conditions. The other thing was they also made sure that when someone got to be Medicare age, that all of that changed and Medicare kicked in and what they were paying changed. Does ours do that?
No, ours does not. Theirs, like I said, theirs turns into a stipend, I guess you'd say. You know, like I said, they're eligible for up to, I think it's up to $150. And there again, it's based on that same, on the number of years. They can get 50% of that $150 if they retired, 15 or more, 15 to 29 years. Over 30 years, it's, the full $150.
Okay.
And that, there is an increase on that 150 each year, like a cost of living increase, I
Right.
think that they've built into that as well.
Okay. Well, basically, what they were saying was, a lot of people, instead of going to Medicare because the county was paying for it, that they kept that. When Medicare comes in when you're 65, I don't think the Solid Waste Authority or the county or any other public entity should be paying for that. If you're going to pay what, their supplement, basically, to me, the $150 would be what they would be paying for a supplement. They're actually getting 100% of that insurance paid. It's just that Medicare would kick in and we wouldn't be paying that part of that. And if we're not doing that, I think we definitely need to go to that.
Well, I concur. I have personal experience that in the private sector, when you reach 65, you are automatically ineligible for continued either corporate or, in this case, public assistance. There's another program. And the only reason someone wouldn't roll over into Medicare is because they get more money out of the one that's,
Right.
that the county has. And that's a very selfish decision, in my view. So I think we should move in that direction.
Well, what Nanette just mentioned to me, of course, Medicare is primary when they reach that age. So then they have just like a supplemental policy, is that what they have with us? It changes. And so then the cost is not as much. Or about the same, sorry.
The cost is about the same. What happens once you get Medicare eligible, you have to change from the standard state plan to what's actually called a supplemental state plan. So, and what we pay is we still pay the percentage. So, give you an example, an employee's insurance when they retire can be approximately $300 to $350. And if we're paying 50% of that, we're still paying approximately $150 to $175 for that employee. But once they become 65 years old, Medicare automatically becomes primary, and they have to change to the supplementary plan as long as they are retired. If they were an active employee, then the state would be primary.
One thing that I like also about the way the county did that was they gave them the $150 so that they have to go through the process, which they should because they know what their problems are. And they choose the supplementary income or supplementary policy to supplement what they feel they need, whether it's medicine or whatever. There are some supplementary policies out there you'd pay a whole lot more than $150 for. There are some you would pay less. But that would be up to them what they would pay. But I think particularly now going forward, every time we choose to do something, we need to look and see how sustainable it is for us to pay for. And to me, that would be more so than private industry because we're actually using people's taxpayer dollars.
Right.
And some taxpayers that would be paying this on their property, their millage, don't make as much as someone else would do, and you're actually taxing that person to pay for benefits for someone else that this person may not even have the benefit for. And to me, when I look at my private industry and what I choose to pay and what I would actually make a decision that other people have to do, I have to look at that in a different way. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of that. Let me say, I won't belabor the point here because I can meet with you two ladies later, but, and you can clarify any details where I'm off track, but I know in my own personal case, there's Medicare, then there's the 20% that Medicare doesn't pay in Part B. I have to pay that. Then I buy additional supplemental insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield. So there's 3 buckets of money. 2 of them I pay into. And I'm not sure if we are doing that or we're just paying all of it so that the retiree beneficiary just walks away with nothing out of pocket. I think that I agree with Pam that we should be same, like, and no better, no worse. But I understand that you've got to comply. I mean, there's certain county tie-ins, certain state tie-ins that I'm not familiar with. And maybe it's being covered, but I'll let you all work on that. And I think you see where Pam and I are going, and we just like to see that there's a level playing surface.
Yes, sir. We'll
Thank
definitely, we'll definitely take a look at that.
Especially given the fact that, as Mr. Knight has said, we're in lean times, and it doesn't look like it's going to get fat again.
Right.
That's a misnomer, but, and I'd like to speak to that at a later time, but I'll wait for you to, I mean, just kind of an overview statement, but I've interrupted you right now, so I'll wait until you get done, and then I'd like to just ask you a question related to that, please.
Okay.
Is that a lifetime benefit?
That is, isn't it, Nanette?
Lifetime benefit? And how is family coverage handled with that?
We don't cover any portion of that, it's just the employee's portion.
But they're able to pay into and pay their portion, still get the coverage through?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. They are. And on that same note, I know there was a meeting yesterday afternoon, I think, with county council and stuff on their benefits and, you know, time off, paid time off, that type of thing. And we do not have the same policy, just to kind of, so you understand this, the county does with the paid time off. Ours is separated. We have vacation time and sick time. Our employees get 8 hours sick a month, which is 12 days. Is that right? And then our vacation time is 2 weeks vacation, up to 5 years. And like I said, and this is time that's accrued monthly. Then after 5 years, they accrue an additional one day a year.
1 day a year.
For the next 5 years. So it goes up to year 10. And then after 10, it goes up to
Same thing.
same thing. It still continues to be an additional day a year. Isn't that right?
So at 10 years, you've got 3 weeks. Then from 10 years to 15 years, you accrue an additional day per year. And so at 15 years, you have 4 weeks of vacation. It maxes out there.
Right. Yeah, we don't ever accrue anymore. And the most that we can have accrued is like 320 hours, 360 hours vacation and 720 hours sick. So, like I said, after that point, like I said, people that max out on their sick time, they just lose that at the end of every year. Same thing with their vacation time. Like I said, we try to encourage them to take it and to use it. We do have a vacation buyback program that they can utilize as well. But like I said, ours is different than theirs. It's separated. Like I said, so I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any questions or anybody need any clarification on that. Our holidays are a little bit different than theirs. They have, I think, 12 set holidays, where we have just 7 set holidays, and then we have 5 personal days. So, like I said, just because we're not closed as many days as they are, so therefore we didn't have the set holidays.
I'd just like to say philosophically, I think that the sick time and vacation time ought to be different, and that earned vacation time, I think, is absolutely necessary, but carrying that over and having the buyback program on the vacation, I disagree with. I think that employees earn that, and they ought to be encouraged to take that. I think from a psychological standpoint, it's good for everybody to have a vacation, and sick's a little different.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We do have they are required to take 40 hours a year. Used to be that it had to be 5 consecutive days, but we don't have that anymore. But they are required to take 40 hours a year. That is a requirement. And I don't know that we have too many that we have a problem with not taking their time off. And as far as the sick time, we've been very fortunate, and I don't know that we've had any issues with people not turning in sick time or not, using vacation versus sick, or sick versus vacation to save their vacation. We've not run into that, with our safety incentive that we have and our sick program that we have as well. Like I said, if they don't use more than, 4 hours in a quarter, they get a $50 check. So that's really cut back on a lot of people
I think
using their
sick's
time for that.
entirely different than vacation. But I
Exactly.
think if I earn 160 hours and only use 40 and you pay me for the balance, I'm not going to be as good an employee.
And we don't. They accrue that. Like I said, the only time they use a vacation buyback is if they were maxed out maybe and, weren't able to use it at that point. So, like I said, it's not where each year they don't use it, they get paid back for it. So,
And there is a criteria that you cannot do a vacation buyback to take you lower than 80 hours.
Right.
And that's after we've
I think that
deducted.
ought to apply to the sick time, not vacation, is kind of my point. I think the sick time, you want to encourage people not to use it unless
Yeah.
they're sick. Vacation time, I think people ought to be encouraged to use.
use it.
With the city of Raleigh, one of the ways they did that with sick time was you could use that, you could accumulate that, but it was used only towards your retirement.
Ours goes towards your retirement. If you retire and you can accrue up to 720 hours, which is 3 months. So if you retire with 28 years, they actually calculate your retirement at 28 years and 3 months.
Good. That was a great motivation with the city anyway, for people not to use their sick leave.
I agree with Lance. I think people are much more productive when they take their vacation and that. So I'm glad that they do. And I guess my outlook on sick leave is if I'm your employer and I'm nice enough to pay you for 5 or 7 or 10 days of sick leave that you're sick, you benefit. If you're not sick, I benefit by not having that expense. But I don't really like carrying over or paying for sick leave. I kind of think that's absurd.
On the vacation, I think that the employee should be required, if they have a vacation time, they should be required to take it within the year. And if you don't use it within the year, then you lose the vacation time and no pay for the vacation time. But use it within the year. If they've got 3 weeks, they should be using the 3 weeks during the year. We all need time off, and we come back refreshed and ready to work, so if you got 3 weeks, take 3 weeks. And if you don't take but 2, you lose the other week. Start over at the beginning of the year.
What we need is not what we think and what we think we ought to do. We need a motion and a second. This is what we want, and we'll change the policy and bring you back a report on what that will do. We don't have a lot built on the books. Some people, they have trouble taking vacation out here. Not everyone, but we definitely need, we don't want to talk about this thing and then 6 months later say, well, y'all hadn't done this. And I don't know what the county's gonna do. I sat through that yesterday. Now, maybe Steve can give us a better handle on what's gonna happen there, but, they were all over the board, and, new employees versus old employees and those type of things, but, we need pretty direct direction on what you want.
Well, I certainly think, starting with 2 weeks, I think the county starts with 5 weeks as soon as you're hired. Okay, okay. So it's paid time off instead of, okay.
When you're thinking about, we are a small organization, not very many people. When you start taking core parts of businesses that people, you got your landfill operations, you can't take somebody from the MRF and put him on a bulldozer. You need to think about that we still continue to leave us some leadway to be able to do those kind of things, because forcing everybody to take a vacation would be tough.
Well, I think it forces them to schedule and not at the last minute say, Bill, I want next week off. If somebody else is already off, I don't have the option of saying, well, I'm taking a cruise next week. Well, I'm sorry, the other operator's already gone and yours is not approved.
If you're gonna do that, I'm not in favor of that, but if you're gonna do that, at least do some kind of schedule at the first of the year. If you wanna draw vacation by seniority, if you're gonna make them take the vacation, schedule, like you said, for the year. If you don't, your operation is gonna go. If you've got a guy that is looking, he's got 3 weeks left and he's saving it, and he's a good employee, and his department gets overrun, and he says, my loyalty's here, I'm gonna stay and do my job, and I'm not gonna take that vacation. Are you gonna punish him for that?
I think it puts the obligation on the employee to make their plans.
Well, if you're gonna do that, then I think you ought to do that at the beginning of the year. I think everybody should know where they stand for the year. If you wanna draw it by seniority, if you wanna draw it by the luck of the draw, I don't care how you do it. I think seniority would be the rational way to do it. But if you're gonna do that, at least schedule the vacation so that staff will know how many employees they have and who's working when. Because what do you do if you end up in the last month of the year and through right, wrong, or whatever, you have more employees want vacation than you want to be gone? How you gonna decide who gets it? You gonna punish somebody for waiting too late?
I think every month the report is generated out of HR that says, this is what has been accrued, this person has taken this amount, the managers look at it, and all of a sudden the manager says, my whole staff, we're halfway through the year, nobody's taking vacation. I'm gonna meet with my staff and say, y'all can't all wait until the last 3 weeks of the year and then I'll be gone. It puts the obligation back on the employee to make those plans and get it approved by the manager. And I think seniority or first come, however you do it, as long as everybody understands the rules.
Rather than belaboring this point, I recommend that we turn over to Finance Administration Committee to bring us a recommendation.
That's what I was gonna say, we can put together some information, have workshop or something that we can spend some time looking at what we have versus even other municipalities, other organizations. Bring something back.
And I always think it's a good idea to accrue some sick time, because you never know. You may have an incident where you or a family member, you have to be off for a period of time. And I think accruing a certain amount of time up to, I think, what the max is. And then, if people don't use it, those people, I think, ought to be incentivized, whether it's to go towards retirement or the buyback or whatever. But the vacation, to me, is different. I like the use it or lose it and then schedule it, and not to take away anything that people have earned.
Right.
But allow them and require them to take it. I think you have happier employees, more productive employees, even if they don't go anywhere. You take a vacation and have time away from work.
I've got a recommendation on the table. What do you want to do with it?
I'd move we set the recommendation. Second.
Probably moved in second that we turn this issue over to Finance Administration to bring us a recommendation to the full board. All those in favor, make a note by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Ayes have it, so ordered. Let's move on.
Okay. All right, I'm going to get into the budget here, and like I said, I'm going to kind of start off with just going back over the revenue figures with you a little bit, and then I'll go over the General Administration Division, and then I'll turn it over to Bill and Esther to kind of go over their division with you as well. First, I handed out to you just a couple different spreadsheets. This is something that we kind of use, we put together each year, kind of helps us. We'll take a quick look at where we were last year, where we are proposing this year, and the increase or decrease. I had two different ones here. One is just, of course, by division. The other one takes the division and kind of breaks it down by category, which, like I said, is always very useful to me, because then I know exactly what areas where the increases or decreases were. So on the one that you see that's kind of stapled together, the two-page, like I said, it just gives you a little more detailed information. First column's FY15. We've got FY16 proposed as the second column. We've got an increase or decrease. And then, of course, FY17 proposed, and same thing, increase or decrease from 17 to 16. So this is just some supplemental information for you to go back and look. It's kind of to me, kind of a quick look at where the changes are primarily in our budget. I'm going to begin on page. Yes, sir.
Ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
As we go through this, if I recall, at the Finance Committee budget workshop, you mentioned that Vance Moore, our landfill engineer, had notified us in writing that he thought that we needed to increase closure and post-closure allowances due to estimated increased construction costs.
He has not sent me anything in writing. When we were discussing this year, when I was, we were kind of reviewing this year, he stated that next year we would need to maybe take a look at increasing, like in FY17. When we get ready to put the budget together for FY17, we would maybe need to look at then increasing closure and post-closure. He's not giving me anything in writing to that effect. Like I said, it was just a discussion that we had on the phone.
But it was for the year 17.
For the year 17, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, on page 3 is just a summary of revenues. I kind of went over these with you, of course, at the pre-budget workshop. No, there have not, the only change on here is your tipping fee did increase, and that increase due to the $4 per ton increase in yard waste material, that we were going from $14 to $18 a ton. So that is an increase there on the tipping fees. The other revenue item that we did add here is the transfer from designated. And as I had kind of explained to you at the pre-budget workshop, I didn't know what that figure would be until, of course, we got all the operating costs in. So as you can see, for 16, we're talking about $469,812 that we may need to transfer from the construction and development. And as I stated then also, we will take a look at that on a month-by-month basis. We won't do a transfer until we see that that's necessary, and I'll come to the board and ask for that transfer before any transfer is made.
What page is that on?
Page 3.
Sorry.
That's fine.
So as firm as you can estimate, the number right now is 450-some thousand?
Yes, sir, that's what we're budgeting for right now, based on what our costs are that we budgeted for, yes, sir.
And all that is a planning document. I understand that you'll be monitoring expenses, and to me, absent some unforeseen circumstance, that number is likely to go down because Mr. Knight and his staff have a way of cranking down how
We're
much
hoping
money
that
goes
revenue,
out.
we're hoping that revenue will go up, is our anticipation, that we won't have to do any kind of transfer. That's our hopes.
Well, I think that's a possibility with increased business climate in general, but still, right now, it's on page 3.
On page 3, yes, sir.
And that would come out of the building fund.
That's on our general construction and development account, which is like the infrastructure, anything that we do on here, if we are building a road or building a building, anything like that, our general construction.
It doesn't affect the closure and post-closure.
No, sir.
Jan, explain where that money came from that's in that account.
The money that goes into that account is just from transfers. Anytime we've done a transfer into that account is the only way that money is. We don't put money aside for that account. Like I said, we go to the board when we know that we have, when I do the quarterly transfer, if there's money available to transfer into that account, that's when we make transfers into that account. That's how the money got into that account. We don't do any kind of per ton transfer into that account.
It's money that's over and above the 15% requirement.
Yes, sir.
And we can call it the building fund or contingency or whatever, but it's in case something comes up we didn't anticipate funding.
If we're planning to build a building or construct a road, then that's where that money would
Is it
come.
Roman numeral 3 or?
No, just regular page number 3. It's under the table of contents and summaries tab.
Thank you.
There you go. Yes, ma'am.
So that money isn't spent, and you'll let us know before you decide to
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
spend that with anything?
Before I do any kind of transfer from that account, I will come to the board.
Okay. Well, hopefully we will not. I understand in Florida, their tourism is already up 30%, and hopefully ours will be too.
I hope so too. I just got the fiber prices in today, and there was no change. There was a slight increase in cardboard, as a matter of fact, I think by $1. So we have not seen any more drop, knock on wood. So hopefully we've kind of leveled off on some of our drop in prices, and maybe even come up a little bit. So
On that $469,000, I mean, that money, if we had to, is money that we would, on a transfers, like our monthly transfers every year, or quarterly we do now, we may not need to transfer as much money, might not have as much money to transfer next year into those other accounts because we'd be using it for our operating budget, so we wouldn't have to go into that account and get it. So like we come to you on a quarter and say we got $500,000 to transfer, because we're low on revenue, we only say we got $250,000.
exactly.
So it would just be less transfers next year. And typically, we do about $750,000, I think, is what we typically do a year, through savings.
I appreciate it. I'm just glad you've got more.
That was why I brought up the Vance Moore statement, and thank you for correcting me. It was 17, but still, I think it behooves us prudent man using reasonable judgment rule. We know we've been the beneficiary of lower construction costs because of a down economy. And as Mr. Long pointed out in Loris the other night, we have awarded about $20-some million in contracts recently related to our final construction process, and we picked up on paper, about $2 million on the budget. That may not be the case going forward because of increased construction costs. And I'm sure I'm just giving you a blinding glimpse of the obvious. As we go forward, we probably need to take into account Mr. Moore's advice, no matter which fiscal year it's in. But you don't anticipate it affecting us the year that we're looking at right now.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you.
This past year, I learned a statement from Mr. Gray, and Mr. Jones said that we were betting on the come. And I'm not much of a poker player, but we're hoping for the best. But we will watch your budget just like we always have.
Me and Jones, Mr. said the same thing at the same time. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I believe I've got that written down. I've got that date written down.
That's a historical day.
I've sat at the same poker table with him. I tell you what. He knows what he's talking about.
Odds ain't in your favor.
Also, one of the things I wanted to add to that was, when we looked at Vance Moore's stuff, Mr. Gray, was that one of the things that's caused us to have to go back and reevaluate it is that we've had less interest anticipated going in that account than we originally anticipated it, because the interest rates was down, and we're working on that to try to get that turned around a little bit. So that could have an effect on it for next year. And we've had less fund money typically we transfer about $250,000 a year into those accounts through transfers. We've had less money to transfer into those accounts the past year. So some of those things could turn with economy turn, which may affect it not to happen next year. So that's the elephant in the room, I guess you could say, is whether or not we're going to be able to get more interest through our new investments. Are we going to be able to do some other things that may lessen the impact of those closure and post-closure account transfers?
We had an outside study done on that to confirm what Vance Moore has told us about that, right, the shortage. So it's not just Vance's opinion. We had somebody else come in and take a look, right?
So overall, like I said, if you look there at the subtotal, FY15, we had $13,188,400 budgeted, and this year we've got $13,541,412, which is a 2.7% increase in revenue. Next, you'll see I have the unincorporated collection system there, which is Fund 6. They have, for FY15, they had $6,286,848, and for 16, we've got $6,913,688, which brings us down to our grand total for all of the $19,475,248 for 15, and the $20,455,100, which is overall a 5% increase from 15 to 16. And like I said, I'll get into more of the unincorporated collection system when we get to that line.
Okay. We are supposed to have 15% of our operating budget put up. We don't have to do that with Fund 6, do we?
That's correct.
Okay, that 15%, we don't have to have 15% of Fund 6. That is not our fund.
That's right. It's just the 13 million.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And that Fund 6 is basically a wash,
It's a pass
we
through.
don't get it. It's the counties. We kind of a land management group for Fund 6. And Fund 4 and Fund 6 it's been confusing from day one. I remember Ron Andrews went to the county one time and had two hats. Had one hat had Fund 4 on it, and one hat had Fund 6 on it. And he'd get to talking about Fund 4, our account, he'd put that hat on. He'd get to talk about the convenience centers, he'd take it off, put Fund 6 on it. But Fund 6 is what it's spent for. It's, Steve manages the paying the tipping fees, but, we just can't get to that money.
Right.
I'd like to follow up on Ms. Creech's question. I appreciate her asking that. Don't we set aside about $3.5 million in the unrestricted funds account related to the 15%?
We don't set it aside, it's just we keep a reserve, as, you know, it's what we take a look at. We don't, some of that money is in those designated accounts.
We keep a
Balance. Right. It's something we set aside.
Well, again, maybe this is one of those things that you can talk to me later about, but I just take 15%, $20 million, and come up with $3.5 million or thereabouts, 3 million something. And that's always the number that's there. It says, well, we're supposed to keep 3-something million on hand all the time, just in case. But that includes the Fund 6 money, and or it seems to. And you say, no, that's not the case. We only keep 15% of the $12 million or so in tipping fees and
Yes, sir.
garbage fees.
And I'll go back and take a look at that to make sure, but yes, it's only the funds, it's only the Fund 4 funds.
So that $7 million is somewhere else. In other words, 15% of our trash fees would be 2/3, or some $12 million or something like that. That means that there's $7 million somewhere that's not unrestricted. It's not part of the 15%, and you can show me where that is and
Yes, sir.
why we're not using that in some other way.
I'll go back and look at I have when I do that transfer, I have a calculation sheet that I use to generate that. So yes, sir, I'll go back and pull that out. I'd be more than happy to sit down and go over that with you.
Okay, well, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, sure, yes, sir. All right, any questions anybody might have on the revenues as we've kind of gone through those, before I move on to the expenses? All right, on page 4 is a summary of expenditures. And like I said, I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time because we'll kind of go through these as we go through the line items. But like I said, just wanted to show you again, like I said, where the different divisions are, the transfers, and like I said, what makes up our expenditures. And like I said, again, we're talking about a 2.7% increase in expenditures from FY15 to FY16. Like I said, I guess I feel like overall, a 2.7% increase is really holding our expenses. Like I said, you know, when you automatically anticipate increases in personnel cost, 2.7% is a very minimal increase, I think, from one year to the next. Like I said, I'll start getting into more of the line items in just a minute. We'll kind of go through some of that. On page 5 is just a summary of our budgeted personnel. There are no changes from FY15 to 16 in our budgeted personnel for Fund 4 or for Fund 6. And as you can see, for Fund 4, we still have 5 unfunded positions. We did that last year with the loss of flow control, and so those positions still remain unfunded for this year. Okay, I'm going to start over in the general administration area and start on page 27. And this is the Board of Directors. As you can see, just looking at the summary, that we budgeted $60,027 in FY15, and we've got $60,226 in FY16. $200 increase was in medical exams and costs, just because we, like I said, with the health screening this year, more of the board is taking advantage of that, so we just did an increase there to cover the cost for the medical exams for the health screening primarily. So that's definitely a good thing. So that was the only increase really in their budget. Page 31 I'll start on page 32. We'll go ahead and go through page 32, which is the Administration Department, which covers Mr. Knight, Mr. Besant, Ms. Powell, and we also have a custodial worker as well. As you can see, like I said, there was an increase of about 11.1% in this department. This is due primarily, first of all, from, of course, personnel costs, increase in salaries due to our STEP plan, which also, of course, increased their FICA and retirement. We always budget, like I said, a 20% increase on health insurance. As you can see here, their workers' comp went up just about, not quite $300. The only other major increase in this department was for legal. You can see that on page 33. We did an increase there due to the fact that we are utilizing Ms. Britton a little bit more. She is, like I said, reviewing a lot of different contracts. She's helping us more with any kind of personnel issues, that type of thing. So we did need to make an increase there. The consulting and miscellaneous, you will see a $50,000 increase there. That is for the waste composition study. And then sustainment contracts did go up a little bit. That just had to do with more with our, increase in cost for our security system and fire system, as well as our copying costs as well.
Which line item is the lawyer thing?
It is account number is 2405. It's on page 33, about middle of the page, under legal. We went from 80,000 to 96,000.
Now, all legal for all departments gets charged to that account.
That's
It's just not for the administration, it's for all SWA business, including the board.
That's correct.
Well, I guess you were saying something, but,
He didn't hear you, Mike.
What I said, Mr. Gray, was that in our legal and administration, the $96,000 includes all legal for the whole SWA, not just the administrative department. It's whether the board uses or utilizes the lawyer, where Esther does, Bill does, we do, finance, it's all up under one code. It's not busted out for each department.
well, I would say, that is that all legal fees?
That's all legal fees.
Well, I would say that, that we as a group are to be saluted, because that comes down considerably. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars over what it used to be. Where is lobbying on this page, or is that somewhere else?
It's under consulting and miscellaneous.
I think a lot of times attorney fees are not generated by us, but by other people to determine how much we're going to spend.
And consulting and miscellaneous, you say $50,000 of it is to, like Danny said, somebody stands up there and goes through every dump truck load of trash and throws it out. According to what do you call it, separation analysis or
That
something?
waste composition study.
Is there, not today, but since we have another meeting scheduled, can you give me a line item breakout of where they go, how that 215,000 is arrived at, please?
Yes, sir. I don't have that breakout, but I can get that for you. I can tell you
But I
what makes it up.
believe that lobbying fees, correct me if I'm wrong, are again way down. There's something like less than 50,000.
I think it was,
It's like less than 30 this year, but we typically put about 50 in it. So 50,000 of that money will be for the composition study, 50,000 of it will be for lobbying, just in case we don't know what happens. So we put it in there, but this year it was less than 30. So hopefully it'll be less than 30 next year. And I was trying to think, Nanette, what else was in there, but it's just some odds and ends here and there. Yeah, our
Financial assurance.
financial assurance is about 20-some thousand a year that we have to do for DHEC. Then you've got some engineering stuff we do in there, that stuff. That's the most breakout. So, about 150,000 of it I just called out, and the rest of it's just miscellaneous stuff. Could be,
That includes engineers as well?
it includes the engineer part that we use for the finance department,
Oh,
not total engineering.
That-
Bill has his own engineering budget for the landfill.
And where does the, for lack of a better term, we used to pay the salary group $260,000. Where does that go?
That's up under advertising, and we don't pay that no more. Esther does that herself.
And that's somewhere else.
That's in the recycling, corporate affairs department.
I think the last time I saw a number on that is around $80,000 or something like that.
Yeah, we'll go over that when we get to her. She'll have it.
And again, that's a remarkable reduction that you all should take credit for. And I'd like to give it to you.
On page 34, the other line item I've got here, the small equipment, as you see, there was an increase in that line item as well. That was primarily for some gutters that we need to have replaced here on the admin building. So we did add $5,500 to the small capital. That's for items, like I said, that, you know, replacement of computers, things they anticipate they may need to replace in the next year. Some things are on a rotation, you know, and these are items that won't necessarily be replaced or happen. They are there. Like I said, as you see, the fax machine being one of them. You know, that fax machine we've had in our office that the whole building uses, we've had back there for as long as I can remember. And so we just put that in there in anticipation in case something were to happen next year. Chances are, if nothing does, like I said, this money won't be spent. So, anyway, that's, like I said, we did have the gutters added in there for next year. So that's primarily where the increases are in the administration department. Like I said, you know, we went from $961,989.15 to $1,068,630, which is 11.1% increase. Yeah, exactly. The waste composition study, that $50,000 increase, by far the largest item.
What was the largest?
The waste composition study, the $50,000 we had to add for that, that's what their largest increase was.
You need a microphone, Mr. Benson.
You need to get your own.
I just kid.
That's okay. We've got them prepared now.
Every word you say is so worth hearing. I just want to hear it.
Yeah, it's getting deep.
He wants something there.
I don't know about all that. Okay, Finance Department begins on page 37. As you can see, FY15, we had $556,724 for 15, and $594,341 for 16, which is a 6.8% increase. In the Finance Department, the major increases are primarily in personnel costs, you know, salaries, FICA, health insurance, and retirement, which is what you're going to see kind of across the board with each division, each department. Just wanted to point out, like I said, on the classified ads, I'm sorry, I'm on page 38. I'm flipping along here, not even paying attention, I'm sorry. On the classified ads, you can see that, you know, we decreased it by $2,000 with the new way that we're doing our RFP advertisements. It saved us a tremendous amount of money, so we were able to decrease that line item. On page 39, our sustainment contracts, you see we did increase that, though, by $3,000. You know, we've taken on, like I said, some new things with the check writing, with the online bill pay, some different things that now we've got, like I said, some additional software and things that we've had to pick up that, of course, everything has a sustainment contract with it, you know, support, so we did have to increase that slightly. And down below at our printing, on the bottom of that page, we were able to decrease that. Again, with, like I said, being able to email statements out to customers, we have been able to save a lot on our tickets and statement paper that we're not having to purchase as much. So like I said, it's definitely been a cost savings for us there as well. So we were able to decrease that line item. Like I said, those are kind of the overall you know, changes for that department. Like I said, it is a 6.8% increase, with personnel costs being the primary increase in that department. Page 41 is what we call our non-departmental. This covers a little bit of everything here. Like I said, we did have an increase, of course, in our health insurance there that you see, and this is for the retiree health insurance, as I discussed earlier. We had a lot of different employees retire past year, and so that has increased there. We had to double that, like I said, to cover that cost. Like I said, That is funded, though, again, through our OPEB money that we put aside. Of course, the increase there in the Horry County Community Waste Disposal Fee, that's the $225 that we send the county. Since we did increase our anticipated tonnage for MSW and C&D, that also is going up for next year. And then the next line item is the fuel contingency. And as we discussed at the pre-budget workshop, we agreed to reduce that by $100,000 since we know the fuel prices have been down. We feel comfortable that we can reduce that by $100,000, still maintain $45,000 in there as a just in case. Other than that, like I said, there's not a lot of changes in the non-departmental. You do see a decrease of 6.5% there, primarily due to the decrease in the fuel contingency.
That store is at $52,000 net after we true up all the figures and.
Yes, sir. What this is, that is for the employees that work over there. We collect all of the money. All the money comes here, and so we record it as revenue. So we also have to record the expenses, associated with that. So we get information from them each month on what their employee costs were. So we have to record both, and then at the end of the year, exactly, we go in and we true it up.
So later on is a netting of all that.
Yes, sir. At the end of the year. Yes, sir.
I just happened to be speaking to somebody who's associated with the Council on Aging, and they were very appreciative of the fact that those jobs over there, they said they did a lot of good.
Good.
Apparently, the people over there is needing work, and you all, we provided for them anyway. It was a very positive statement.
Well, the Council on Aging provides, but right, like I said, having the store available for them to use has been beneficial. Yes, ma'am.
Has there been any difference in how much we are actually contributing to the charity than it was last year?
To the store?
That they're actually paying for Meals on Wheels. Is there a difference in that than it was last year?
I'm not sure what they're paying now. We changed the percentage last year based
Right.
on, on that. But as far as what they're contributing to Meals on Wheels, I'm not sure as far as that goes.
Okay. I'll just say again, to me, a charity is what it's for. I'm not really concerned about them having a job. I think those are for volunteers. And I think the most of this money, Steve's helping bring it here and stuff from his stuff. We're helping take care of that. I'd still like to see more money go toward the charity than paying employees. I think that's what volunteers are for.
I'll get in touch with Elaine, and she can give me some information on how much of what we've given them is going towards Meals on Wheels. I'll find out for that. Okay, that's all I have right now for the General Administrative Division. I'm going to turn it over to Bill and let him go through the Disposal Division.
Good morning to everybody. Before we get started, just wanted to bring you an update. We've penciled in some dates for our piggyback expansion that you can put on your calendar. We're going to do our advertisement next Friday, March 20th. So that will go out to prospective bidders. We will have our mandatory pre-bid, which will be April 1st at 10 a.m. The bids will be turned in April 29th. And right now, we've got a 2 p.m. time for those bids to be set in. It will take about 30 days to review and then have a recommendation approximately around the end of May.
What's our budget?
$13 million.
Yeah, I probably counted your money a little bit early, John, but anyway. Between that and the first two, it comes up to about 20 million in a fairly short period of time, all of it related to
With the
building.
closure and the piggyback, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
But
Thank you.
I know y'all are interested, like to come to those meetings that we have, so I want to make sure we got those out. We got those locked in yesterday. I've asked Stephanie Todd to come in. She is our environmental property and compost manager specialist. And so I've asked her to help with a couple departments today. Her division, the environmental management, actually starts on page 44. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, and she's going to go through some of the adjustments and increases that we've had in her department.
Good morning, everyone. If you look at 504-2420, that's engineering. There was an increase in this due to the fact that next year there will be an update for our general stormwater discharge permit.
Page are you on?
It's on page 45,
Needs a microphone.
about midway the page, where it says 2420 engineering. We have an increase there, like I was saying, because the general stormwater NPDES permit that our property operates under is going to be changing. So Garrett and Moore, as our engineer, and we'll have to update our stormwater pollution prevention plan to include and incorporate any new changes that this permit will have. You know, and it could be sampling, it could be different monitoring, and various things of that nature. 2425, monitoring and testing, that went up, and it is due basically because if we do have to pull additional samples, then that's more cost on us. You know, we do quarterly monitoring, visual monitoring, we do weekly and quarterly inspections, and we have to do annual sampling as it currently stands. The third one, if you look at 3111, which is landfill gas maintenance, there was an increase there because we need to buy some pumps that we have in our condensate sumps and in our landfill gas wells. The purpose for those pumps is to keep the wells dewatered so that we can have that available gas pulling in so that we can pull it over to our system to run the engines that Santee Cooper has. We have quite a few pumps that are now, they're old and they've been in service for quite a while and they're getting to the point where they can no longer be repaired. So we just need to try and replace as many of those as we can. Any questions on that?
This doesn't include landfill construction, right?
No, sir.
You gonna talk about that now? Thank you. Sorry.
All right, thank you. Department 510, the landfill, actually begins on page 49. But if you'll slide over to page 50, the first adjustment we had right there was our contractual services, waste tires disposal. We went up $15,000. We've seen a huge increase this year on waste tires that have been brought in. We're going to spend this year probably around $155,000, so I wanted to make sure that we were covered for next year. So bump that just a little bit. But tires continue to come in. It's kind of like the e-waste, the Horry County, and just a lot of tires come in. The next line item, contractual services and labors, we bumped that from $15,000 to $20,000. Currently, we're getting very few inmates out here. And part of our monthly inspection is to have litter control out there. They inspect for blown litter. So in order to do that, we've got to have some temporary help come in here. And so I've budgeted to have some temporary help come in about once a month to help keep the litter up out there.
Don't think there's less crime. What's the reason we're getting less inmates?
They're processing them a lot quicker. I think now, from what I've heard, I guess they're giving them almost 3 days off for every one that they work out here. They've got to have an X number, I don't know if it's 25 or so, just to operate the jail out there from what we've been told. But we just are not getting them as we used to. We have started working them some on the weekends, getting them on Saturdays and Sundays to work the litter out here. That's helping a good bit. But going through the week, 3 weeks ago, we had a 51-mile-an-hour wind storm come out there. And the bags that everyone would like to see, probably banned around here, they were all over. So it takes, we've picked up probably, I'd say in the last 3 weeks, close to 900 bags of litter on the landfill. It's been that much out there.
Please do keep all of those figures on how much you pick up in bags and pictures and what it is and what it's costing us to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be glad to.
What was that number you said they needed to keep the jail open?
Steve might know more about it than I do. We've been told, our staff here, about 25 people to operate the kitchen and some other facilities out there.
I understand. Boy, 3 days off for every day you work, pretty good. I was in there, I'd go for that.
And you can smoke.
Yeah. Our next line item is the equipment M&R, the leachate, 3111. Increased that from 30 to 45,000. Reason being, currently we have 8 side risers throughout the landfill that pump the leachate to our tanks out there. With the closure project coming on board, we're going to be going from 8 to 14 leachate pumps out there. When you send these pumps off, they range anywhere from about $2,100 to $2,300, $2,400, $2,500 for repair. You can imagine they're down in that leachate, and they've got all that black stuff around there that just accumulates and hardens. So, I mean, we've got to have these pumps working at optimal condition at all time. So, you know, like I said, we're increasing 6 more out there, so we felt like we had a need to increase that to make sure we covered our cost on our leachate repair. Next line item on page 51, sustainment contracts. We've increased from 76,000 to 89. We've got some equipment coming on specifically next year. We've got a bulldozer, 2 track hoes, and a new compactor will be under TM&R, total maintenance and repair agreements, for 4 years. And so that's how that's the reason for the increase right there is those sustainment contracts.
Yeah, the ones we get next year gonna run.
Let's hope so. I think we need to talk to Mr. Campbell about that when this meeting's over.
I'll see if I can handle that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
If you got any connections, can give us any help.
Oh, yes, I can.
That's pretty much for the landfill division. Was there any questions on anything
Go back
else?
to contractual services. Can you talk some more about that? That's the biggest number on there.
Yes, sir. We've got, currently, we've got a compactor, or 2 compactors, a bulldozer track hoe, and another, and 2 other bulldozers. They're under TM&R right now, and next year we'll be increasing that with a bulldozer track hoe and another compactor for that. We pay a monthly fee. It's like a bumper-to-bumper warranty. They come in, they do the services every month. Anything that goes wrong with the machine out there, it's up to them to come in and repair it.
That's for fixing the yellow iron and keeping it up.
Yes, sir.
Where's the engineering?
That would be line item 2420.
Okay. And that's all we plan to spend for the next several years?
Yes, sir. On the engineering right there, it's $20,000. We didn't increase that. We actually lowered that from 25 to 20. That primarily is our AUF study. It's a flyover each year to give us our compaction numbers for the C&D and the MSW waste out there, how many pounds we're putting per cubic yard.
I remember when we were discussing the change order, I just noticed that Garrett Moore's fee was $600,000. Would that be in the 2015 budget?
That would be in the piggyback, if that number right there. It's not in any operating budget line item here.
Is it somewhere else on the pages?
That would be in the capital budget.
Which comes later?
That comes later, yes, sir.
Okay.
I think Ms. Bidding will be discussing that. Okay, in Department 511, which is the yard waste department, which actually begins on page 55. The first line item I want to talk about is the equipment maintenance, account 3110. We reduced that from $125,000 to $100,000. The plan is this year to install the electronic chipper out there in Department 513. So we've estimated roughly chipping the wood back there is about 23% of our time and cost to clean wood. And so a lot of that cost is going to be moving up to Department 513, the C&D recycling. So we felt like we could reduce our maintenance cost in the yard waste division. Next line on page 56, materials and supplies. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail in just a minute. We've increased that to from 1,500 to 30,000. The big cost there is the 25 to 26,000 for the catalyst bugs that we'll need for the food waste composting. And Stephanie's going to talk about that in just a few more minutes.
Okay, what number is that?
That's on page 56, line item, it's 2220, materials and supplies.
Okay, thank you.
The next line item right under that, 2222, small capital. We requested some 2-inch grinding screens. Two of our bigger customers, Myrtle Beach and North Myrtle Beach, prefer the 2-inch, a little bit smaller than what we're doing now on the mulch. So we want to try to accommodate them and get the smaller screens in there. It does give a lot prettier mulch material that they're asking for. In fact, Myrtle Beach, or North Myrtle Beach is coming in now. It's picked up 3 loads from us. So we want to continue that, try to get a good product out there for them.
You charge them more for that?
Right now, it's the same price.
Okay.
Next line item is 2225, the monitoring and testing. With the food waste composting coming on board, there's more of a requirement to send off and sample the compost that is made with the food waste out there. So it'll require more testing, more monitoring out there, so we want to cover our costs there. And the item right under that, the postage, we increased that to $3,000. When you send off the food waste for sampling and testing, you have to overnight it, and it has to be put in a cooler with ice and sent overnight to get it there as quick as possible. So there is cost right there shipping that FedEx out. So we've increased that line item right there. With the interest that the board has shown in the food waste, I wanted Stephanie to come in, and like I said, she's a real specialist and our compost manager. So we wanted to bring to your attention some of the real important facets of the food compost permit that we did receive yesterday. So we're going into this. It's a new project, but we wanted you to hear what all's involved. It's just not go out there and throw the food together with some other dirt compost.
Okay, one of the things that we do currently, we do monitor temperature and moisture content. And we do this twice a week. And after we get the data collected, we turn the rows, and then my guy will go back between the rows with a small skid steer type piece of equipment and clean the lanes to make sure we have access in case of a fire, and we're required to have a certain distance between the windrows. But for the food waste composting, for temperature and moisture monitoring, each time you put on a new row, it will have to be monitored every day for the first 5 days of the composting process, so that you can record your temperature and moisture levels and ensure that your temperatures don't get too high, and that they are going to get high enough to do what it needs to do to reach that thermophilic stage so it will decompose properly. So that's one thing that will be a little bit different, because with the wood waste type compost, it's not quite as involved, so to speak. The moisture content has to be monitored, and we actually have a probe to do that. We have a long temperature probe that we place down into the middle of the compost and windrow. We go about 50 feet down from each end, and then we choose one location in the middle, and we insert the probes and give them time to stabilize, so we get a good accurate reading for that location. And then we do a row average. We just do a calculation of what the average temperature is for that row. So the record keeping, we do the daily and weekly temperature readings, moisture observations, and one thing new that we're going to have to do with the food waste is that whenever a row is completed, whenever they start putting it on and get it completed, we have to start keeping up with startup dates. So if row number 1 was completed putting on today's date, then that's something in the records in addition to, so we know the entire process time from beginning to end process when we have a material that's ready for sale. piles where internal temperatures are observed to decrease and not increase, we turn. Like if we see that one row is particularly kind of coming down, we'll turn it an extra time maybe to see if we can bring those temperatures up. If they don't come up and it's been relatively low for the last couple of monitoring events, then we know that it's ready to be screened for sale. The Category 2 feedstocks, when they come in, they'll have to be unloaded in an area which is designated in the stockpile area. It will have to be unloaded onto a bed of Category 1, which is our ground yard waste. We'll have to have a nice little bed with a big berm around the edge.
What page are you on now?
I'm reading from our operations for compost. Yeah, the actual permit. So once we construct this bed of Category 1 feedstock with the berm around it, we will offload the food waste into it to control runoff liquids. Immediately upon unloading, the Category 2 material will be covered with the ground 1 category material, and the resulting combined material, a combination of Category 1 and Category 2, will then be placed on the windrow pad for composting. So once it comes in and it's offloaded into our bermed area, and we get it mixed properly, then we'll go ahead and place it onto the windrow to start out the process. The windrows will be clearly marked with signage stating what feedstocks are contained in each row so that the appropriate quality assurance and testing can be performed and documented. So it'll be rows 1, for instance, 1 through 6, and maybe rows 1 through 3 are food waste, compost and rows, and the remainder are just Category 1. So that has to be documented so that everyone that's working on the site knows what's required of each row in order to get our best product. Compost samples shall be collected, stored, and analyzed in accordance with the procedures found in the U.S. Department of Agriculture publication, the test methods for the examination of compost and composting, which is the TMECC. Category 1 feedstocks are not required to have the testing because they're assumed to, with proper temperature and time records, have gone through the complete decomposition process and are safe for consumers to use at their disposal. All compost from the Horry County Solid Waste Authority composting facility for sale or distribution to the public and produced from feedstocks other than Category 1 must be tested and meet the designation of Class A exceptional quality compost. In order for compost to meet the Class A exceptional quality compost constituents, it must contain less than 2% physical contaminants by dry weight, so it has to be good and clean. You can't have a lot of debris, bag particles and things like that. It has to have a stability rating index of stable or very stable. It has to meet the Class A pollutant limits, which are a number of different elements. And then, for instance, like cadmium has to have a minimum of 39 milligrams per kilogram for dry weight. But there's a table there that includes, what we have to go by to meet that. And it also has to meet the standard for R.61-107.4 for pathogen reduction. And this is kind of where the catalyst is also important. Yes, it does help to speed up the process from day one to the final day, but it also helps to maintain temperatures at a high enough rate to ensure that there is sufficient pathogen reduction, meaning because one of the concerns with introducing the food waste, fecal coliform levels, salmonella, listeria, staph aureus, and you have to maintain those temperatures for a determined amount of time to make sure that you have a product that's very safe for consumers to use. So we have to, based off of the tons of compost that we produce, that would dictate how frequently we have to sample. It's estimated right now that it would be once per quarter. And it does have to go to a South Carolina certified laboratory. And if we wanted to follow the U.S. Composting Council's STA program, then it would be required to be sent to one of their approved laboratories. And we have a listing of those as well. Any questions on that?
I think
There's a fee for the testing, of course.
Yes, sir. Laboratory fees for the STA portion testing is $318 per sample.
318?
Yes, sir.
I think what's, in short, what they're saying is that this year it's about $30,000 to start composting. As we get bigger and more into it, it's gonna take more manpower, more effort to do it with.
That was one of the things I wanted to ask. Are you doing all that by yourself? I know you said you and Mike was doing some of it. You out there by yourself?
Well, right now, we ain't started it, but it'll start real slow, and Stephanie and Bill will try to keep it within their things, but as food composting gets bigger, it's gonna take more people to do it.
But right now, we're doing more with less or the same. Stephanie, you've been working, girl or lady, and we'll get to the bugs later. Or is this the time to ask questions about the bugs?
Yes, Mr.
I'm sorry to use the phrase bugs, but that's the one he used. Is that generally called anaerobic type digestion or something, some big phrase like that?
Well, when they introduced, Charleston County introduced us to this process when we went for that site visit. And he said, basically, you open the bag, you put one on each end of the row, and then they work their way through. And, they...
Well, I mean, are they like dung beetles, or are they worms, or?
No, actually, it's more like a filamentous type organism.
It's a what?
It's like a thread-like organism that runs
okay.
through the. You
Like
can't
tapeworm.
see it; it's microscopic, of course, but that's kind
okay.
of what the nature of it. And it just works its way through the composting mass in the windrow, and kind of speeds things along and helps with
And
the temperature.
Charleston uses this
Yes, sir, they do.
successfully. How long have they been using it successfully?
Did you-
I think it's about 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
What does the product look like that you purchased?
It looks like a gray dust,
Looks like what?
a gray colored dust
You mean the
or
thread like
powder.
Man,
bugs
yeah.
and stuff?
I'm glad they're not like ladybugs. My mother had an organic garden, and she would buy thousands of them. And if there wasn't anything to eat right then, they flew away and they were gone. So I'm glad these don't have wings, and that will not happen under that circumstances. The other thing I would like to say, I have done a lot of research on the food and continue to do so. And I saw on YouTube a thing that California is doing with that. And they have now, which saves turning it over, it saves their labor, it saves time. And I think it saves on buying these bugs. They have like solar panels. And they've been utilizing this technology for quite some time. And it's a great deal less time consuming, less labor consuming. And I understand that you saw that in Texas, Danny.
I don't.
You,
What night that was, he saw it.
Were you, did you not see something like this in Texas when you went to the convention? It was like solar panels that were over this food waste, and okay, well, then I would like to find out, I thought you had, but I would like to find out about that, because when I looked at that and researched it in California, when they came up with the solar panels and the heat that it generated, it cut the time basically in half. They didn't have to have the bugs to actually go through that and generate it. It cut the labor. They didn't have to turn it as often. And it was relatively inexpensive. But if we're going to start this and we're going to do that, if we can keep those kinds of startup costs off and we can find the money in the capital budget to do that with to start with, I also think it'd be a very innovative thing. I know Charleston was first in doing the food waste, but I think anything that is more efficient and saves money and works better, I think would be a great thing. So if you would look into that, I would appreciate it.
I would like to.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Department 512 on page 59. That's construction and demolition. Couple items there, line item 3110, equipment maintenance, we reduced it from $20,000 to $15,000. And the one kind of ties in with that, below it, the sustainment contracts. Probably within the first quarter of next year, we're going to be relocating or transferring a compactor over there that's under a TM&R agreement. That's a sustainment contract. And so a lot of the maintenance cost for the compactor will just fall under that sustainment contract. So we felt like we could reduce our equipment maintenance for the other pieces of equipment we have in that department. We could lower that $5,000. That's pretty much it for construction and demolition. Next department, 513, that's the C&D recycle, I'm sorry?
The total cost is over on page 60.
Yes, sir.
And the revenue, is the trucking included in here? We don't have trucking.
That's the C&D facility,
Yeah,
C&D
I'm sorry.
landfill.
Yeah, I was thinking.
That's what
Yeah, not in the C&D.
But the revenue portion will be reported elsewhere.
Yes, Ms. Bidding's been through that already. That's in the revenue that she went over early on. There's a list of the revenues, each department, Jan.
You already covered that?
On page 3 at the front, the revenue, yes, sir.
You remember what it was?
And then 125,000.
That's right, that's right. See, 125,000.
I don't want to misstate the case. We took in 125,000.
Talking about C&D construction. What tipping?
Oh, for C&D construction, I thought you were talking about C&D recycling revenue.
Well, I am.
7,000
I'm talking about the factory.
7,000 tons.
He's talking about the
Yeah,
factory.
but he's talking about the C&D, he's talking about right now, he's talking about the C&D landfill.
Yeah, I just finished that. I was moving on to the C&D
He-
processor.
He's talking about the C&D landfill right now, he's not talking about the factory yet.
Okay. That factory comes.
That's coming next, yes, sir.
Thank you. Sorry.
The construction demolition as the factory, the processor begins on page 63. The first line item I want to look at is electricity and heating. Line item is account 2115. We've increased that from 7,000 to 40,000. We've got an estimate, talking with the power folks and someone else that has an electronic chipper out there, that it's normally somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 per month for electricity to run that chipper out there. So we wanted to cover our car. Really, we're going into it this first year. I think it's 460 volts, so it's, it's going to be pulling some power out there. So we wanted to make sure we were covered there, and hopefully we're in good shape, and we won't have to increase that. Line item 2130, our tip and fee, our rejects, we lowered that 35,000, and that's primarily due, ties in with the electric wood chipper. We haul the wood chips to the back now. They're considered rejects when they come off the line. We weigh everything. Those, after we get the system in place, will not be going back there. So we won't be counting those as rejects, and they'll stay up front and be hauled out directly from up front up here. So we were able to reduce that line item. And our equipment maintenance on page 64, line item 3110, we increased that from 15 to 40,000. If you remember in Department 511, we lowered it 25,000. We're going into it, this will be our first year. And so we wanted to make sure that we had enough cost in there for hammers and teeth, the cutters and all that. That thing over, the processor over there runs 6 to 7 hours strong every day. So we know it'll be some wear and tear on the equipment over there, so we want to make sure that we were covered on those costs. Now, Mr. Growner, did you have any questions? That's the major changes in Department 513. Did you have some other questions?
I used to weld hard surface rods on teeth that would wear out, break down. You reminded me of me being a teenager trying to beat somebody, but go ahead.
That's pretty much it for Department 513. Okay. Also included is our maintenance shop, which begins on page 67. A few items I want to bring to your attention there. It's actually on page 68, line item 2220. Materials and supplies, we increased that from 3,000 to 7,000. Our new maintenance manager that we brought on board in August, September timeframe, he has done just, Rich Stetter, he's done a fabulous job out there. And we were actually, we were behind on some of the things that we needed to do to get us back up to really where a professional organization need to be. He's got a goal and a plan where he wants the shop to be, and there's some items that we need to get out there to get our shop looking first class, and so that's why we've increased that line item right there. And as far as the small capital, we've got a MIG welder out there. We increased that to 4,000. The MIG welder is about 20 years old, and you know from welding, Mr. Gray, you just mentioned it, those things wear out. And so we need to get a little bit bigger one than we have, one that'll do the job on the heavy equipment that we're comfortable with. So that's pretty much operations, landfill division. Any questions?
What was that number?
125,000.
Huh?
125,000 for revenue for the C&D recycling facility.
Okay. Now, I don't want to make a statement that's incorrect, so we run that at a $400,000 loss.
I'm sorry, sir?
We run that department at a $400,000 loss.
That does not include the tipping fee that we take in as well, so I was gonna give you the tipping fee.
And the diversion rate.
It doesn't include any tipping fee monies that go to that facility as well.
I'm just looking for an overall number, and I don't have to have it today. And this will be the third item we're supposed to talk about later, if you will.
Let's get that right.
Total revenue that we have for that facility is $363,500.
Total revenue,
Yes, sir.
365.
63,500.
So,
That's the tipping fee that we collect, the
Uh-huh.
material that goes over there, as well as the material that we sell from that facility.
okay, thank you. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just, because it does take material out of the landfill, and there's an intrinsic cost related to that, a valuable cost. I'm just saying that it's an investment we make in the spirit of recycling.
Yes,
But
sir.
I think we need to be aware of that. It doesn't come free. 300 and some odd thousand in this case. Thank you.
I think the new term is diversion.
Thank you.
What we're diversioning away from the landfill is the new term.
What term did I use? I need to stay away from that term.
Recycling.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Esther.
Okay, my departmental review is going to begin on page 70 with the Public Education Department. This is the department that has our 2 recycling coordinators in it and handles all the public education and recycling programs on that end. They saw a net increase overall of 2.97%. And for the most part, that net increase is attributed to the personnel cost increases that Jan mentioned earlier. We did have very small incremental increases in things like materials and supplies and our field trip funding. But overall, the significant increases were due to personnel cost. Any questions in public education?
This is where what I was referring to is the TV money or provoking.
It's in the very next department.
Thank you.
No problem. The next department would be corporate affairs, and that would be the department that myself and Ms. Terry, our administrative assistant, is in. Overall, we saw an increase of about almost 4% in that department. Again, most of that is attributed to personnel costs increasing. Mr. Gray, if you look on page 76, line item 2325.
76.
Yes, sir.
Which line item?
2325, it's the second from the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
$138,000 for promotions and public relations. $84,000 of that is attributed to Talking Trash, the 6-month recycling program that we run through the fourth graders at the schools. The remaining $54,000 is used for our specialty advertising, if we're doing things with Grinding of the Greens, or if we're doing things with Ori Telephone and the recycling programs through them, or America's Recycles Day, or Earth Day. That general advertising that we run, it's not near what it used to be, but it is some still there to handle
Yeah.
those instances.
What is 2335, where it says promotion and public relations?
That's the money that has the advertising money in. That's what that is.
That 22,000 is included in
I'm sorry, what page are you on with the 22?
71?
Oh, 71. Okay, let's back up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's back up. Okay, in the Public Education Department, the 2325, that handles our website hosting fee, us to have a website up. It also handles our phone book advertising. We have a yellow page advertising as well as advertising in the white pages so people can, for those like me who still use a phone book. It also covers when we go to events, for instance.
I get it. You
Oh,
understand.
okay, you got it.
So
Okay.
really, you add those two together and you get, well, this-
Overall promotions and advertising.
which is less than half, or a good bit less than half.
Yeah,
what it used to be.
it decreased significantly over the past 3-4 years.
Yeah, well, kudos to you, and what is it, you is working harder or smarter, or
Both. Both.
getting a raise?
Yes, sir, both, Mr. Gray, both, Mr. Gray. There is, on page 77, under small capital, which is the 5th item on that page, there is an increase there of about $4,200, and that's primarily, we're in the process. I met yesterday afternoon at the State Archives office, and we're in the home stretch of having our records management plan in place. And once it's in place, the record storage equipment and system that you see there will assist us in bringing our records to where they need to be. So that was that increase there. If there are not any other questions with that department,
I just want to
Yes,
say
sir.
that I saw that, but in fact, I've seen it several times. I think that it's a Channel 10 on their TV personality, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, it showed a bunch of school kids, and they were competing for a laptop or something like that.
Mhm.
I thought that was very well done and cost-effective. As we all know, you train the youngins in the recycling, maybe that'll take care of our needs in the future.
yes,
in a
sir.
better way. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to move on to the material recycling facility, starting on page 80. You'll notice that there's actually a decrease of about 3.9% from fiscal year 15 to 16. And that's primarily related to, if you turn to page 82, it was mentioned in the pre-budget workshop that with the end of the Sunoco contract, as well as we're no longer receiving any recyclables from Republic Services, those line items, one was virtually eliminated, the other one was reduced. And we left $20,000. We went from a total of $160,000 to $20,000. And we left that remaining amount in there in the case that there is an opportunity to receive recyclables from somewhere outside of the county. And that would help if there's any transportation costs that we would have to pay to receive those. So that is primarily the reason for the reduction. You also note the three line items, 2432, 2433, and 2430. All contractual services, those are all dealing with our contracted laborers that we use at the MRF to assist with processing the various commodities. We used to have them all broken out. It was more of a headache on our end to make sure we're charging the right person to the right account number where all the money is still in the same department. So we just consolidated it. And in that particular area, we did, there is a net reduction in that area. We did, as we mentioned at the pre-budget workshop, we did decrease those staffing there by 2 because of us not receiving the out-of-county recyclables anymore. But this is where we did go back and increase it by 1 person so that we can have somebody manning the, what I call the reject pull line, where we have someone pulling the plastic and steel off of the reject line. Small increases, about $5,000 increase in equipment maintenance. And that's primarily due to our equipment is getting a little bit older. Our processing line is now 8 years old, or 7 years old, excuse me. And with age comes normal wear and tear, speaking personally. So there's some increase there. Let's see, the other increase in this department on page 83, top of page 83 under small capital. We do utilize two-way radios to enable our employees while they're on the processing line to have communication capability back to the office or back to their supervisors. So that's scheduled to be purchased. They were scheduled to be replaced next year. And then there's a slight increase in our tire area. Tires are expensive. We've seen an increase in cost with regard to that. But overall, the department did see a decrease in overall expenditures for the next fiscal year. Any questions?
Just under $2 million.
Yes, sir.
Does that?
Just under.
Does that, very good, does that include the $700,000 or so it costs to bring it over there with our cardboard trucks?
The collection and hauling department has a separate budget, and we're going into that one next.
Okay, so
This
either
is-
all or a substantial portion of that one can be added to this to come up with a total cost of, what does it cost to run the MRF?
Your
Can't run it without those cardboard trucks coming through, or you can't, it's a substantial kick-in.
yes, sir.
What they, that doesn't, it wouldn't include what we pay, or the county pays for unlimited to haul those,
Yes, sir.
over there, so we get that out of Fund 6.
Yes, sir.
And Jan, you know what question I'm gonna ask you when we get, say, well, how much money did we take in?
Revenue.
But you can answer that when you're ready.
I've got it for you.
Okay, well, lay it on me, please.
You're talking about the revenue for the MRF?
You want it for the MRF or collection hall?
Both.
Well, the total cost of running the MRF, which would include,
Total cost of running work was the this year, it was,
Well, the revenue we're anticipating next year for the MRF and for collection and hauling is 2.8. Am I right? I'm sorry, 2.6. Sorry, I can't add this one. 2.6.
revenue for collection and hauling would include the $30 a month that we charge for those cans.
That's correct. Yes, sir. We're anticipating that for next year, budgeting for next year, $245,000.
Do we consider that part of revenue from recycling?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was that number?
That's $245,000.
I mean, but the total.
total number.
The total is
2.6.
2.6.
2.6 million?
Yes, sir.
And what does it cost us to get that 2.6 million, is what I'm trying to get at?
The cost from the MRF's budget is 1.9.
It's about 2.93.
So, yeah, I was gonna say it's about 2.93 for the two together. collection and hauling and the MRF.
How much is it?
2.9.
Collection and hauling is 2.9?
No, collection and hauling is only 972,000.
Okay, I'm just gonna put me in there just to try to get some kind of grasp on. So it's about $3 million cost and about $2.6 million roughly that we take in. Am I in the right ballpark?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Here, I'll share mine.
Sure. I've talked too much, maybe that's the sign. But that's another one of those diversion programs that we pay for. If the private industry collects them, they can collect them, but we collect a lot of people the private industry don't collect. That's another one of them diversion programs Danny was talking about.
Oh, I concur. You know, $400,000 a year, 300, I'm just rounding, using round numbers. But that's a cost that as a public agency we bear, in this case, to keep it out of the landfill and also to deal with something that, other haulers or other organizations don't deal with. They don't want your tires and your batteries, and used things, all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
And also as a side note, that revenue is, the majority of that revenue is based on market prices. So if they go up, you could have,
Yeah.
Where you would have a year that was profitable as opposed to one that might have ran into a negative situation.
And we don't, like, other jurisdictions will fund all or part of their recycling programs with an ad valorem property tax, under the notion that applies the burden to all who benefit, whereas we pay it, all from tipping fees, which means that we target only a portion of those who generate. In fact, the post-Buckley Shoe and Jernigan study that we did recommended that we have a property tax, but that would not sell to the county council. I'm getting on a different subject, but, okay, I'll be quiet.
It's okay.
But Mr. Gray, too, year before last, we did $3 million worth of revenue, and our cost hasn't changed. Our costs went down, but when revenue's up on the sale of recyclables, it more than pays for itself. So that was the point of having these type programs, is that we have them in the good times and the bad times to sustain them.
We could break even if times were better.
We make
Well,
profit.
you're,
Or even make some.
yeah, make money, yeah.
Good, I understand that. Thank you.
The last department I will review with you is the collection and hauling department. Significant changes in this department. Equipment maintenance, there was a increase of about $5,000 there. Again, when we review our equipment to be replaced, we determine whether it's in our best interest to replace it or to maintain it. And we most often, if at all possible, maintain equipment maybe longer than the replacement schedule calls for. With that comes additional maintenance and repair. There is a slight decrease in equipment maintenance for containers, and that's a number that we will repair containers based on what's in that funding. We did do a slight decrease in our fuels and lubricants. Fuel pricing has gone down. We felt comfortable dropping it some. It's about 2% drop there, but not a lot because they'll probably go right back up. So, and then a $5,000 increase in tire repair. In the MRF, as well as in collection and hauling, we did though see, and I meant to mention, increases in depreciation for our equipment because we did buy a new baler at the MRF this year, and we did buy a new cardboard delivery truck, container truck this year in collection and hauling.
Yes, I remember that baler went from like 8 bales an hour to 12 or 20 or something
It's working well. We're still tweaking the process, but it's performing well.
I mean, the old versus new
Yeah.
went up. Tell me the rough numbers.
It was, I probably wouldn't go 4, but at least 2 bales an hour,
More,
depending on the commodity. Yes, sir. Depending upon the commodity.
and it don't break down.
It better not. It better not. We're not talking breaking down. But that department saw an overall increase of about 2.5%. And that's all I have in my recycling programs. And Jan's you're gonna go over
I'm just,
unincorporated.
yeah, unincorporated collection, like I said, this is our Fund 6, and I'm not gonna really, go over this. There's, like I said, there's not, a lot of changes in like the line items, anything different. So, and like I said, because it is a pass-through, like I said, we're just managing those for the county. The only thing I really wanted to kind of go over is their biggest increase, their change, is in their capital projects for next year. And like I said, and of course, they take those by direction of county council. It's what county council wants to see done with those centers as to how it's budgeted. And so just a couple of things that I was gonna mention was what they kind of had planned for next year. One is the expansion. They're gonna expand the Long Center, and expand the Lake Arrowhead Center, which is just a mini recycling center. They're gonna relocate the McDowell Shortcut Center. They need a bigger facility. And then they've been asked to construct a new center in the Race Path area. So those are the projects that are kind of going on for next year with the centers. Like I said, it has increased their site development budget due to those projects, but like I said, that's from the direction of county council. So, like I said,
When it's all said and done, will there be a surplus if everything goes according to plan?
Fund 6, there could be, depending on, tax
I
money
mean,
collected.
we don't get to keep that, but.
No, sir, no, sir. This
Their
is-
money.
This is all their
Change
money.
tax.
All we do is bill them for their actual expenses.
And we charge them like $125,000 a year or something.
I think it's about $130,000 in support
130.
services.
That ain't enough to put up with people like, no, never.
But we send this budget over to Mr. Gosnell for their review. So they've had a chance to look at it as well. So, anyway, I'm gonna move on just, to the capital budget. And wanted you just take a look at page 5, starting on page 5. Just gonna look at FY16's, capital items. As anything that is in an A, marked with an A to the side, is coming out of equipment replacement fund. As you can see, like I said, it's, anything that's been, like I said, budgeted to be replaced according to the schedule. A lot of times they push things out. As you can see, a lot of the items, several of them have a carryover, which means that it was scheduled to be replaced in that year. And the division directors have decided to hold on to it a little bit longer. So, like I said, you can kind of see what they've got coming out of through equipment replacement. Anything with a C is coming out of that general construction and development account. As you can see, those are kind of in the middle. On the disposal division, we've got a concrete, an apron area up by the shop that they want to do next year. It was scheduled for 15, but they weren't able to have the time to get it done, so they've moved it to 16. The Green Sea property area delineation. There's an overhang shelter for carpet recycling. And then with our food waste composting permit, one thing that is required is this chain link fence grinding, in the grinding area. So those are the things that will come out of our construction and development account. As you can see, with items with a D are coming out of our landfill construction. And of course, we've got the piggyback construction phase 1 in there, the $13 million. We have the leachate wastewater treatment facility. That is something that we carry over every year. Stephanie asked that to be in there because I think it's something that we may have to do. It's one of those things that we don't have to do, but there may come a time that we do, so we budget for it every year as a just-in-case type thing. The rest of them that you see with with an E, those are the ones that would come out, be purchased if we have the funds available. When we look at that quarterly transfer, and if there's something that we need to purchase, that's where those funds would come to purchase those items. Under recycling programs, I did miss one down there under the, construction development. There is they want the tipping floor resealed, that they have carried over since 14. So that's, like I said, primarily the capital expenditures. And if anybody had any questions on anything with those?
And then page 4 gives you a list of these designated funds that you can go to.
Right, yeah. Page 6 for FY16, it does, it breaks it out by the designated fund, or where the funds will be coming from to cover those capital items.
I have a question on that, but I saw you pull it out.
Thank you. Curiosity, have we already cut the timber in Green Sea? Have they already cut the timber that they were talking about?
We have, yes, ma'am, we've gotten paid for that.
How much money did we make cutting the timber?
I think it was close to $55,000.
And how many acres of timber was that?
There was different parts of it and different ways we did it. We clear cut some. Yeah, it was roughly 100 acres. I think it was somewhere around 100 acres, but it was different types of work we did on different acreage out there.
Yeah, we can get you a report on it, but a large portion of it was ground because it was so small. And then we select cut part of it.
Where was that?
Green Sea.
Green Sea, Floyd. I'd like to see that and how that was done.
Bill can get you.
Thank you.
But you took bids on it to have it done, all right? Sure.
Yes, sir.
The question I had, if I remember correctly, our auditor stated that we had enough funds to take care of future contingencies related to closure and post-closure.
Yes, sir.
Either enough funds or enough, or in his opinion, the income stream charges that we would make in the future would cover everything. Or we were clean, we're not short.
As of right now, that's why when we take a look at what we're putting aside, next year when we take a look at what we're putting aside, we may need to increase it so that we will have the funds at the end of the landfill life.
But right
We were $1
now,
million short, were we not? And that was the reason we were considering the increase. Advance said that we needed an increase.
Right, and we're gonna look at increasing again next year.
So we were short, not, or we will be short.
Right,
Right.
right.
was that based on recent information from the engineer, or was that based on what the auditor said?
That was engineers.
The engineer and the outside consultant that
That's
we
right.
brought in confirmed that. We had two, they looked at it, we had 2 looks at it.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're referring to, but,
Boyd, it had been in the, he'd been with Waste Management for quite some time. He was a consultant
Yeah.
with them,
Right.
was he
Paul.
not?
Paul was his first name.
He's a friend of yours, I believe, wasn't he, Mr. Gray?
He is, Mr. Campbell. You have an excellent memory. I believe you used to sell him yellow iron, and a
Yes,
friend
I
of yours
did.
too.
Yes, I did.
Well, we have a mutual friend, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
He now works for Republic. In fact, he runs the Lee County landfill now, among other things. What's Paul's last name?
Mike, it's Mike Lloyd.
Mike, I'm sorry, Paul. Mike who?
Mike Lloyd.
Yeah.
But subject to what Mr. Campbell just said, we know that construction costs are going up, and we're going to monitor those. And we did pick up some, quote-unquote, pick up some money and took some back with change orders. But so far, so good. We think we got enough money, or will have enough money, when it comes time to raise the flag up there on Mount Trashmore.
Yes, sir.
Where the eagles gonna go when the seagulls run off?
They'll go to the Sonic.
Okay. I hope I'm living when that flag is raised. I wanna be there.
Is there any other questions with the budget or anything in here, any other information that you need? At this point, what I do, like I said, we are kind of a little bit early with going through this, which is great. Like I said, you know, the county's getting ready to prepare for their budget workshop. So my next step is I have to get our budget figures to the county, for their workshop. And so I don't give them any figures until I've gotten the board's okay to go ahead and forward our budget figures to them. And like I said, not that we still can't make any changes if necessary, you know, at this point. But that's what I just need to know from the board, if it's, you know, if I have your approval to go ahead and forward these figures, if there's any changes any of the board would like to see, you know, in the budget, any other information I can get for you.
Yeah, I'd like to not this minute, but schedule a time to come over and clarify some
Yes,
of
sir.
those minor details. But Dr. Coakley, may I say, you have conducted an excellent meeting. I think I've, like I said, in investigating Iran-Contra gate, it said follow the money, and you get all your questions answered. I think staff, everybody here has done an outstanding job. I don't see any reason other than to take the numbers at face value. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need a motion to?
To go ahead and forward this over to the county.
I move that we give staff approval to move forward with the budget as presented.
I second.
Probably moved in second that we give staff the authority to go ahead and forward the budget on as we have discussed it. All those in favor? Or any discussion?
Oh,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposers? Ayes have it, so ordered.
one thing that I failed to mention is I was going over the salary increases. As we do every year, we have a salary step that we budget for as well. And we also, of course, include the bonuses in there, which, like I said, can come up for discussion, you know, at that time. But I do like to make you aware that we budget salary increase as well as the bonuses when we do our budget. That's been our norm, and I just wanted to make you aware that we follow the same protocol this year. So, but we can discuss it at the time when we normally award bonuses.
Are you saying that the pay increases are already included?
Pay increases and bonuses, yes, sir, are already included in those figures.
And the benefits and extra taxes and extra.
Yes, ma'am, everything. Yes, ma'am.
And you tell us that after the motion.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. There's a method to my madness.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to ask Bill, do you know, there's a school over on 701, I think they teach, working on engines and things. You know what I'm talking about, Mike? Do you know, Bill? Okay. I had heard at one time that, when they were teaching them, they would take them out to different car places and different things that they were working on those engines. And I'm just wondering if maybe we could partner with them, and maybe since there's a need for the engines, the leachate pumps that we have and the different engines and the machinery that we work here, if they're teaching that kind of thing, if maybe they could do some work or teach them to do some work that would save us a lot of money, or they could actually add some of the equipment they have to their protocol, and we would have some people around here that would be able to do that and come to the landfill. Might save us some money in the future.
We can take a look at that, especially for, you know, the heavy equipment back there. The leachate pumps, one thing about them, they have to be in a really controlled, clean environment. I mean, you about have to eat off the floor when they repair those things. So I don't know if they were set up for that over there. We can certainly ask them. But as far as working on equipment, I'll get with Rich, the maintenance manager. We'll contact them and just see if we can partner on something.
Yeah, it might benefit them to learn that in this area where they're working and add that to that, and it might help us with some man hours we might not have to pay for.
Well, we have we call it a substitute teacher program now to help out when we're shorthanded, so maybe we can lean on that a little bit. And I'll get you that report on that Green Sea also.
Nothing else, we'll adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Amen.
Ben, will you just, I got to run my next meeting. Will you get with me